All right, welcome everyone to the Beyond the Blend podcast. I'm your host, Ben Stewart. Today I have Nate Call with me. He is the owner, founder, and CEO of Qualitas Management Group. Nate, why don't you give yourself an introduction? What do you guys do? How did you get from where you were to where you are today with your company?
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Like Ben said, I own Qualitas Executive Group. We are a quality and compliance consulting firm for dietary supplements, food, beverage, cosmetics. We always make the joke that we're the lotions and potions quality company.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of those clients. I've been in the industry about 15 years now.
Okay.
Started in manufacturing, cut my teeth building quality systems, supplier quality systems for a very long time, auditing suppliers all over the world, and really just built Qualitas to address the issues that I had faced earlier in my career and that all of our clients and partners had faced. So simple things like building quality system frameworks, label reviews, compliance checks, really anything that a traditional team can and should be doing. That's what we built the business to do.
That's cool. So you started in entry-level position in quality, right? You graduated college food science, or what was your background to get into?
No, so I had, some college was really on like the business psych path.
Okay.
Wasn't loving that. Had already progressed pretty well into my quality career because I had kids pretty young and had to have a stable job regardless of, what my educational plans were.
Yeah.
And it's kind of reached the point where I was experiencing diminishing returns on the education side, and then just dove, 100% into quality.
Okay.
And it's been a ride ever since, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, that's great. So that would have been about 2010.
Yeah, about 2010, 2011.
So the market's definitely grown a lot since you started there. Which is that'd be a great time to get into something like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely.
Well, that's great. And obviously you can see here, this is our first time doing a podcast in the production space. We got the blender table set up here.
Yes,
a
sir.
New production room. We're glad to able to make this work. But with this podcast, our goal is really just to interview people that are shaping the industry, people that are working in dietary supplements, health and wellness, and even just anything CPG related.
Yeah.
And your experience is so interesting to me because you've worked for brands. Big brands, little brands. You work for little manufacturers, big manufacturers, scaling manufacturers. So you really have such a unique experience around quality and a great perspective. I think so many quality people, they have a very niche focus or perspective, and it can be tough to get advice and input from them because they might be too one-sided or they might have their blinders on. But someone like you has seen how these FDA codes and these NSF codes are actually lived out in a variety of different ways, and that's where I really value you guys' input on just whether it's for a brand or for a manufacturer.
Yeah, appreciate that, and I agree. And that's been one of the problems I've faced, and again, why we started the business is I would have a very specific question about a very specific issue, and I would have to track down one of the 3 people in the world who had the answer to that question. But for us, I think we're definitely unique in that, I've been to 900 plus facilities, 35 countries, hundreds and hundreds of audits. On the audit side of our business, everyone on our team is the same in that they are cross-category, kind of platform agnostic, so to speak. So we can walk into a facility like this in the same way we could walk into, a milk bottling plant and offer guidance, or for beauty. So I've always felt that the best things about quality are transcendental of any industry, right? So if you lean into the industrial quality best practices, that's 75% of the battle to begin with.
That's good. And their principle, the best quality system is built on principles that transcend one's individual facility, right? That's good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first question off here. What's one life experience that shaped how you think about quality?
It's a good question, and I think about this a lot, and people ask me, what got you into quality?
Yeah.
And for me, it was really just being picky about everything, not in the sense that I want everything to be perfect, but picky in the sense that I want the customer experience to be what they expect it to be, right? Meet their expectations, and those expectations are, this product is not going to harm me. What is on the label is what is in the product, and how it's marketed mirrors whatever effect I assume I'm going to get from that product, right? And so that kind of initially kind of guided me down the quality path. But I would say the thing that affected me most is having kids.
Really?
in that, I truly think that, and the team and I talk about this all the time, we're building a safer world, we're improving the industry. And so when you walk into a manufacturing plant, and I'm sure you've seen this too, it's easy to forget that the products we're making are for our families, our neighbors, our kids, right?
Yeah.
And so that's always the lens that I look at quality through, is not necessarily would I feed this to my kids. I'm not going to give my kid a 500 milligram shot of caffeine or anything like that, but how am I shaping a better, safer, healthier future for my family?
Yeah, I think that's like something we talk a lot about, like at our morning huddles when we're doing quality training, or even just development for team members, is really like putting yourself in the mind of the consumer, and even just like having that level of conviction, like someone will consume this. For us, it might be a production goal of 30,000 bottles, but it's 30,000 people,
Exactly.
and even more than that in some instances. So that's I love that. That's a great way to do it. Okay, so jumping in the next section here. So when we're talking about retailers and regulation changes, like last year in 2024, the Amazon came out with a lot of new regulations for sports nutrition, weight loss, and you see, all the different political landscape changing in FDA. My question for you is, what's changing within Amazon and other retailers, and how do you think that's going to impact brands and the trickle down of manufacturers over the next 5 years?
Yeah. It's a really good question, a very big question, and something I post on LinkedIn about a lot.
That's great.
And I have conversations every day about it, and my perspective is really this. And not always the popular perspective, but I feel like FDA has generally failed the consumer when it comes to dietary supplement quality. Yeah. It's always been kind of vague and unclear at the consumer level what authority FDA really has over supplements. We all hear dietary supplements are unregulated, and which we both know is very far from the truth. But in the age of transparency, and that's really what it boils down to, is the consumer wants to know what they're getting, and having a label is not enough evidence for them, right? So really leaning into supply chain transparency, leaning into quality systems at the end of the day, because that's how you keep that promise you're making to the consumer. That is really being driven by Amazon and Walmart and Whole Foods and those larger, either digital or physical retailers. They are leading the charge and forcing the industry down that path of continuous improvement, supply chain transparency, ingredient quality, and traceability. And so I think that's what brands and manufacturers have to prepare for, is you can't really scale your business to 50 or 100 or 150, $200 million without at least having the basics in place, the product documentation, the test results, all of those things. But yeah, I mean, you can't rely on the manufacturer to be your quality team for you any longer. I think there's always push and pull there to some extent, but the depth of documentation that these retailers ask for is much more robust and dynamic, I suppose, than it used to be. So brands have to be on their toes, which means manufacturers have to be on their toes and understand that you will get this wave of requests from your customers. And that's why it's important to have a mature quality system as soon as possible to be predictive and just naturally gather the information that you'll eventually need to share.
Yeah, agreed. Man, it's kind of like, I feel like it's their approach with it is, whoever's generating the most income from it should be the one responsible for it, right? Not a perfect system. Always has some backlash with that, people losing their listings and things like that for no apparent reason. But overall, it seems like the industry is moving in a positive direction.
Agreed.
It's going to force people to be more accountable, and it also levels the playing field. It should anyway, where brands that are selling a sub-tier product at a lower price point are not going to be able to do that anymore and keep their label claims the way that they're currently marketing them.
Definitely, and Amazon especially they're actually policing the industry. They're not just saying, okay, submit this documentation, Eurofins, UL, NSF will review it, give their stamp of approval, and you're good. So they're going to buy product from their own platform, have one of these agencies test it, and they'll pull your listing down. We've had clients who have come to us, new clients, and said, I just had half of my Amazon listings pulled because I had results that didn't meet the specification I submitted, or the CVA, or whatever it was, to Amazon. And they say I'm losing $40,000 a day, $50,000 a day per listing. And so to me, that's the most compelling cost of quality there is, where we're not trying to win the race to the bottom on the consulting fee side. I mean, we do good work, and that good work has a cost associated with it. but it's not going to cost you $150,000 a day times 14
Right.
days because your listing is down. It's a preventative tool that you can use to really prevent issues like that, but accelerate the growth of the business and make new product development and commercialization go a lot faster. And so it's an interesting dynamic with Amazon, and whenever there's a consumer safety issue that they find through surveillance testing, it's game over. There's no amount of negotiation you can have with them that will be favorable to you.
Yeah, and it's such a tough thing. Like, and I always look at it from like a plant side. It's like the best maintenance is proactive maintenance. It's the maintenance that you plan for. It may be more expensive in some ways, but it's cheap. Cheap is expensive too. It's even more. It's more expensive than premium. And I think like bringing like your guys' team on board, like we've done, it's really allowed us to be proactive, not being reactive to, hey, we got a bad audit or an issue happens, but hey, let's be proactive on improving the system. Let's improve our foundation so it's built on good principles and not on reactionary. What can you get away with as a brand or a manufacturer? And I think that's the hope that the direction of the entire industry is going to be moving towards that standard and less about what it's been over the last 15 to 20 years.
And I feel like that type of mentality is what will make or break manufacturers over the next few years, especially coming out of COVID and now into tariffs and all of these geopolitical, macroeconomic things that are out of our control. It's the proactive manufacturers who already care about quality who will win. Because everyone is in this mad dash to find secondary and tertiary suppliers. Whereas a company like yours, you may need to do that, but you already have a process in place to qualify them and kind of weed out the bad actors.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think it feels a lot like, like when with the peanut butter recalls and what that did to the FDA regulations and retailers relying on third-party certifications like SQF to come in. It feels a lot like we're going through like that movement of what happened or that cycle for food, but it's coming into more in effect into supplements, which is great. Okay, so next that kind of sequences into the FDA changes with our RFK. He's obviously doing a lot of changes in the FDA. I guess how you as a quality consultant, how do you think that that's going to impact both brands and manufacturers? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your take on that?
I think it is a thing for sure. It's hard to say if it's good or bad, and my viewpoint is pretty simple in that whenever regulatory pressure seems to drop, we should expect retailer and industry pressure to increase. So whatever slack FDA has is going to be picked up by the Amazons of the world, the NSFs of the world, and whatnot. But in general, I think the way that FDA had managed the industry was very antiquated. It was not effective. Not to say anyone at FDA is bad. Almost everyone I've met at FDA been great, highly intelligent, very effective people. But we've also had a lot of situations where we've had FDA come in and miss glaringly obvious compliance issues like a lack of specifications or a lack of identity testing, or the master manufacturing records don't quite make sense based on the requirements. And I think as FDA is in this not so tactical retreat mode, we're just going to see a lot more enforcement action happen on the consumer side. And that will be through, like I said, the Amazons of the world. But it's hard to predict what's going to happen now. I would never be someone who thinks that FDA is just going to completely annihilate and remove dietary supplement GMP requirements or food or anything for beauty. Those things will still be there. And a lot of our clients ask us questions like, okay, the FDA has been gutted. What's the likelihood we're going to be inspected? I tell them it's impossible to predict. And I have had clients this year within the last 60 days get hammered by FDA, have weeks-long, no notice, unannounced inspections, 483s flying everywhere. So I think it's really a matter of severity more than it is likelihood of detection or frequency. If FDA does show up, they are going to try to make an example out of manufacturers, which I would do the same thing, right? If everyone around me is losing their job, I'm going to make sure I'm the most effective person in the room. And that means they will be absolutely ruthless when they inspect facilities. And that should be expected.
Right. And we're the root, the core, like we're where we get the product that's made. Yes, brands are responsible, but the manufacturers have to be responsible with code and not just, we have to be responsible to FDA, not just the customers, right? And
sure.
to the consumers as well. So if you're, the kind of hot take, but if you were to estimate or guess, which ingredients do you think that we're going to see outlawed in the next 6 months? They just outlawed all the food dyes. What do you think they're going to go after next?
Ooh, that's a dangerous question. I tend to look towards Europe, Canada, Australia, and we tend to be a few years, I wouldn't say behind them, but we like to take our time when it comes to banning certain things. So I know there's a fear that, things like ashwagandha and kava are going to be banned because there's a lot of scrutiny there in other international markets. I don't know that I could predict a specific type of material ban, but I think we will see increased scrutiny from FDA over those ingredients. So we may see issues with new dietary ingredient notifications. The GRAS process is probably going to get hammered pretty hard. And so that's where I think a lot of the impact will initially hit. And then it'll have a ripple effect on specific materials that no longer fit kind of squarely in a regulatory box.
Right. Yeah, it's going to create a lot of challenges and opportunities at the same time in supply chain. It's kind of, if you look at it like a game, it can be kind of fun. There's going to be a lot of constraints that are going to be created because all these other ingredients are no longer used, or, whether FDA bans them or not, consumers are going to be demanding that much more of the products that they're using in their bodies and on their bodies. So
definitely.
Okay, so building a quality system. Let's say you're a fast scaling brand. Where would you advise them to start building a quality system, a quality process? If they're like the traditional brand that's always relied on the manufacturer, where do you suggest they start?
It's a good question. Checks and balances, making sure that you know what to check and you know how to balance what you are checking, right? Okay. So that is on the supplier side. If you're a brand, you're scaling, you went from 0 to 50 million in 3-4 years, something like that, just rocket ship kind of growth. Go to the manufacturer, make sure they're real and they exist, and they're not a broker hiding behind an email address, which happens more frequently than people think. Go to the site, make sure it's real, make sure the people you're talking to are actually the people who work there. If you can't audit them or you don't have access to an auditor for some reason, look at their most recent FDA inspection or a third-party audit report, something like that, just to at least have a good general understanding of what's going on. You shouldn't expect them to be perfect, but you should at least know where those known imperfections are. And then specifications and a quality agreement. If you do nothing else, you need to have specifications and a quality agreement to delineate that the supplier is responsible for this, the brand is responsible for this, together we are responsible for these other things. So setting expectations on paper in a binding document through a specification, that is the best thing you can do to protect yourself. I'm sure the attorneys listening would agree with me.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value in working with a manufacturer you can trust to set those specifications, but in your experience, do you advise brands to trust what their manufacturers set? And if not, what do you suggest they do to check that and make sure that they are up to standard for what their product needs?
I think, yes, you should trust your manufacturer to some extent. I would hope you do, right? If you're giving them a lot of money, you should trust them. But to me, it's about the trust but verify kind of approach of, I do believe you, but I have a surveillance testing to prove that my belief in you is well placed, right? So if we have this specification and I have a manufacturer doing rotational testing on, macro, minor active, something like that, I'm doing the same mirrored testing, maybe at random, maybe at a predetermined frequency, but I'm doing that surveillance testing myself to know, and maybe I'm not even communicating that with the manufacturer, but I'll test offline 6 months post-release to make sure the product is still safe or it still hits, the label claim and whatnot. But it's all about trust but verify. And luckily with technology nowadays, especially on the documentation side, there are a lot of ways you can do that without ruffling the feathers of your manufacturing partners.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think that's such a good advice, because so many people, they just get overwhelmed with I don't even know where to start. It's such a, I'm a brand marketer, I'm a supply chain person by default, not by training, right? And it's tough if you don't have that quality experience. So just having a game plan for step one is so crucial.
Yeah. Well, I like to tell brands as well, especially the fast scaling ones, who look at us and say, oh my gosh, this big technical system looks terrifying. And I look back at them and say, you have a very sophisticated sales and marketing process here. Your funnels are massive. You know how to do technical, sophisticated things. This is just the other side of your brain working now.
Right.
So as long as we can kind of help them understand that they are capable of doing this, they just need a nudge in the right direction, or we can do it for them fractionally, it kind of disarms people. And I think a lot of brands who are small, founder-led, they're just scared of what they will uncover through building a quality system, so they just don't want to touch it until, you know, private equity or an investor comes knocking, and you go through the diligence process, and your valuation gets a little bit of a nosedive and a haircut.
They're going to find it. That's their whole goal. They have a very great incentive to find where the issues like that if you're not prepared for them.
I mean, you're going to pay for those gaps. Whether it's on the front end or the back end, or somewhere in between is up to you, but you're paying for it.
Yeah, the devil, what's that saying? The devil you know, right? You at least know where your gaps are if you have them. And I found that's so helpful, just to be being proactive. It almost never pays to be reactive. Just being proactive is the way to go.
For sure.
Okay, so now you've talked about this before. Quality, a lot of times manufacturers, brands, anyone that's focused on revenue generation oftentimes looks at quality as a cost center. Do you view it as a cost center? Why or why not?
It can be a cost center if you have a bureaucratic, kind of weird culture where there's unnecessary red tape just for the sake of having red tape. So a different way to look at it is a quality system that would work here would not work for a $500 million company or a $1 million company, right? So you have to right size your process, your teams, everything to the actual business. Understanding, a growing business is growing and systems should grow with it, but that's how you create the value center within quality, where it's the prevention of issues, which can be difficult to quantify if you weren't tracking them in the first place, but you'll understand how valuable your quality team is if you're tracking cost of quality, cost of poor quality, first pass release, and you just have basic metrics in place. You can turn quality into a value center very quickly, especially if you do things like testing in-house, where you are recovering a lot of those costs. And you can absolutely look at quality, and I always tell people quality is a value center, because we hate quality until we need them, and we need them to get into Costco. We need them to get into Walmart and Target and Whole Foods and Amazon and all of these other platforms. So you have to do it, and I think to fight against that need is silly. To me, it's legally required, largely, to have those processes, which people like to forget. But I mean, there's a lot of value in having a system that delivers consistent results to meet your customer's expectation. And all it takes is one wrong thing to happen. And
there's so many different things that can happen, and it's mistakes are inevitable, right?
Sure.
But like to your point, like how you mentioned when you first got into quality, I think the best quality people I've seen are very passionate about the products. Like they really care about the consumer that's using them, that it's going to be effective, that the products, that they actually believe in them. And yes, you can look at quality as like a regulatory standpoint, and I think that's where you get like that bad politics of quality being, all the red tape, and they're a brake, never the gas pedal kind of a thing. But if they care about the quality of the products, I feel like that mindset really helps you elevate everything that you're doing beyond just satisfying regulatory requirements.
I totally agree, and I think that's well put in terms of brake versus gas pedal, and something to think about that we often talk a lot about with our clients is, if you have someone who is passionate about quality, and they are passionate about the product, like you said, and they want that customer experience to just be best in class, it's as perfect as it can be every single time. Going through that process largely satisfies 95% of the regulatory requirements anyway. So that's testing into oblivion until you know with certainty this is exactly the result you're going to get every time you go into manufacturing. You've gone through all of the stress tests you need to, and you've documented everything. Congratulations, you're a quality person now, because that's really what we're doing at the end of the day, right?
Showing me what you do, doing what you say, and showing me that you did it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so next question here. We're right in the middle of tariff season, I like to call it. We're at the end of April of 2025. So, I mean, the new administration's been talking about tariffs. Everyone was kind of preparing for it, but we didn't quite prepare for it like this, right?
Yeah.
Now we're seeing a lot of, especially in the supplement industry, things like sweeteners, herbal ingredients. There's carve outs for the vitamins and the amino acids, but some of these trademarked ingredients also are I don't know, it's a confusing topic, right? So
Yep.
the problem is you have all these increases issuing. I think last week we just had the 20 or 30% notice on the sweeteners from earlier this year. I think with that kind of shakeup, it really creates there's a lot of problems and opportunities, right? But what's the piece of advice that you have for brands and manufacturers that are doing sourcing right now as they're seeing these material prices increases, they're looking for other suppliers? What do you think kind of issues can happen, and what should we be looking out for?
It's a good question. I think the tariffs are tricky to navigate from the quality side because there's a component of speed that has to be, addressed certainly. But at the end of the day, to me, it just goes back to ingredient traceability and quality, where you have to have a good supplier qualification process in place that is fast, not something that's going to take your quality team 9 months of back and forth.
Right.
It's here's a questionnaire, here's a data request list, let me come on site, let me do a remote audit, let me do something where I can verify that you are who you say you are, the product is what it says it is. And so building out a kind of a fast path to commercialization through a very fast supplier qualification path, that's the best advice we can give people beyond having secondary, tertiary suppliers in different regions of the world if they can. We have some clients and partners who source, and in supplements especially, 90% of their materials come from China.
Right.
They're shipping those to Taiwan, Vietnam, a less tariffed country, and then that is the actual route that product will take into the U.S. But that's maybe a good strategy. I'm not a logistics tariff expert, but I think beyond moving material into a different region, if you can, to avoid tariffs, just qualifying the right suppliers is all you can really do. And being a financially healthy business leader to weather the storm, because it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
It will, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's like there's only so much you can do. You have to be adaptable. You have to move fast, be scrappy, but at the same time, there's when I look at it, like, man, this is such an opportunity for people making concessions on things they shouldn't, whether it's supplying, qualifying a new herbal ingredient supplier that it's there's not a lot of traceability around that. There can be a lot of risk with adulteration with it, and it's going to be, there's going to be some pain attributed to this, and the right way to look at it, I think, for us is, can we be adaptable? Can we find other options? But we're making a profit all the time is not the goal right now. It's just how do we set our customers up to succeed so they can get through this season and also just thrive long term.
Definitely, and I think beyond what you just mentioned, I think a lot of it on the manufacturing side especially is formula rationalization as well. Do we need all of these fairy dust things that you think you need for marketing purposes in the formula? They're going to jack up your COGS by 30 cents a unit, right? So I think we're seeing people be far more intentional on the formulation side and sourcing, which is great for us on the quality side. It makes your formula tighter, more concise, more precise, and it's all around a good thing.
Right, yeah, like the idea of like kitchen sinking your formula, you're just trying to throw every add-on you can to up the competition is probably not going to be the right strategy to get through this season. That's good, I love that. Okay, so then one question I always am curious of is, you see these brands that are scaling, growing fast. I'm sure when you pull back the curtain, sometimes you see brands that maybe aren't doing it, as from a quality standpoint as good as they could be doing it. But for the ones that are really like setting the example, what do successful brands get right about quality? And do they have it together early on, or how did they grow into being proficient in quality?
I think what the brands who do quality right tend to do best is they're extremely proactive about the known risks inside their supply chain.
Okay.
So they are building these defensive moats around their products, around the process, around the business, understanding that, we may have a regional supplier who's in a high-risk tsunami area or some type of environmental threat area, so we have redundancy there. And that is not always driven by the quality team necessarily, but is part of crisis management and risk management, which is a function of quality. And so the brands who really think about that in a broader sense versus just worrying about, is this batch or this lot, is it going to fail testing? That's where we see a lot of brands start to think is, oh, I had a batch fail. What do I do? I need quality now. It's no, you needed to qualify the ingredient supplier. You needed to do preservative efficacy testing. You needed to do these million other things. And so they have a very robust but simplified system to do those things quickly, where we may have a laundry list of, I wouldn't even say boxes to check, but things to be mindful of during the commercialization process, and they're very rigid about the things they need to be rigid about. We're being flexible in the nice to have kind of what if scenario. So flexible rigidity is kind of the joke that we make, where you have to really stand on the values of the business and be flexible in other areas, right? Where you may have an ABC tiered supply chain. You really want to use that A supplier, but for the sake of speed, we can only use C. So we know because we're using C, we need these additional tests in market. So it's like that type of thinking is, I think, really what separates the brands. And on the compliance side, it's kind of two sides of the same coin, where you can't have a great quality system without having a good compliance system, and vice versa. So just being prepared and being kind of obnoxious to your suppliers is a good thing.
Yes.
I think where, if a $250 million brand came to you, they're going to ask you for a boatload of documentation for every ingredient, every supplier. That is what they should be doing.
Sure.
And that insulates them from a lot of risk.
Oh, it does, for sure. And that's where, I've seen that again and again. Like, we really, in most manufacturers, I would say the good ones, they really look at that as like, man, like they're respecting us as their manufacturer. They're going to invest in the relationship. They're doing this right. That's the kind of customer that we want to scale with. And it's, I would say that like it attracts a manufacturer like us. We're like, man, we're up for the challenge. We want to work with someone that really wants to stand behind what they're doing. And I see so many times where, smaller brands, founders, they're growing, they're scaling. It's exciting. They're seeing revenue. They're crossing the 7-figure mark on Amazon or whatever marketplace they're selling in. And it can be really exciting, but it also can be, there's always that question like, well, I have no idea. Like, I know how to sell something. I don't know how to really run a quality program. So for a brand like that, at what point do they start where can they actually start building that foundation in your opinion, and what's the first step they should be taking from once they've crossed, $1 million in sales and they're scaling to 10?
It's a good question. I think it can depend on the product category you're in. I think the guidance, but I think it just goes back to having finished product specifications, having a quality agreement, having a supplier agreement, having yourself legally protected, and being sure that those legal protections allow you to request the information that you need, being C of A's, test results for environmental monitoring, whatever else you're going to need, audit reports from third-party audits, stuff like that. Give yourself the option, and I guess really just optionality when it comes to documentation in general. Start there. And if you have the resources to, and I think everyone should, if you're growing a business and you say, I can't afford testing, you are not in the right business, and your costs are an issue. So I would say trust but verify, build out the documentation system, do as much surveillance testing as you possibly can. And then really, if you're going to put all of your eggs in one basket on the manufacturing side, and a lot of brands do. I mean, if you're a brand new dietary supplement brand, you're not going to be in 9 different manufacturers and have all of these layers of redundancy. Go slower than you think you need to. And it's not a situation of move fast, break stuff, pick up the pieces later. You're going to kill your brand before it even takes off, right? So be a little bit slower, intentional, methodical, but leave that flexibility to move quickly when you need to. But don't be razzle-dazzled.
That's good. I like that. And I think it's so often, so much of business is not what you know, it's who you know, and know what you don't know, and go find someone who knows that, like working with you guys, or finding another resource for yourself just to be educated on it. I think it's it's kind of like working with an accountant. If the right accountant should have the heart of a teacher, and I think the right manufacturer should have the heart of a teacher as well. If your manufacturer is throwing terms at you and you just don't understand, either get someone to help you understand it, or just like tell them, you need to teach this to me like I'm a 4th grader. And I think that's the brands that I've worked with that have had that kind of curious mindset, that really they're not acting like they have it all together. but they're just really trying to learn. Like those are the ones that we want to help, and the good manufacturers will. If your manufacturer's ever annoyed that you're asking those things, that's a big red flag to me.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up, and this is something we often chat with our clients about, is if you have a manufacturer who's giving you some long, drawn-out, technical, jargony explanation and you don't understand it, and they're not willing to coach and educate you a little bit, or they hit you with, this is just how the industry does it, this is what everyone does, don't worry about it, trust us, move on from the issue, you should move on from that manufacturer. Almost every situation I've been in where a manufacturer has said, this is just how the industry does it, it is because they screwed something up and they're unwilling to accept the accountability that comes with that screw up. 9 times out of 10, that's the case.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, that's that, and best case scenario, they're still going to be really difficult for you to work with.
Right.
If you can't trust them to teach you what it is that they're going through in the process of it.
For sure. No, I totally agree with that.
That's good. Okay, so next question next section here. Brand scaling, they've outgrown their first manufacturer, they're trying to bring on a second, or they're bringing on their first one. Give us a quick, for someone that has a small team, what's the bare minimum they need to do for bringing on a contract manufacturer?
I think putting together a pretty simple supplier questionnaire that includes data and document requests is a good move. Asking for things like site licenses and certifications, FDA registration number, searching them in the FDA inspection database. If you Google FDA data dashboard, you can do a lot of digging on manufacturers very easily. And again, having specifications in place, having written agreements, supplier agreements, quality agreements, stuff like that, that's what you should be doing. And of course, go to the site if you can. If you can't go to the site because there's a logistical issue, like, you're in Minnesota, you have a supplier in Egypt or something like that, probably doesn't make sense to hop on a plane in Egypt, but you may be able to find a qualified person in that region who can at least go pop in for a couple of hours and say, okay, this is a legit business. I talked to the same person you've been talking to. This is a real operation. Do whatever you can to verify that it's a legitimate operation.
That's good.
And don't rely too heavily on third-party certifications. You want them to have those largely, but having those certifications does not mean the site is perfect. You can have all of the fancy bells and whistles on paper, but until you go to the site, you're going to have no actual idea how proficient their quality system is as it relates to you.
Yeah, that's good. So can you share an example without sharing confidentially things you shouldn't, but just, what kind of story can you share as it pertains to that, where there's been a supplier that has all of the third-party certifications that makes them sound really good, but you go there and it actually isn't up to snuff for what the brand needs?
Yeah, countless stories. I mean, I dealt with one earlier this year where we had a former client who did not want us to go audit a prospective contract manufacturer because they've been FDA registered for however many years, and they have all of the fancy certifications, the GMP certifications everyone wants. And they said the risk is really low, and I told them, I don't know how to believe that, because you're telling me I need to rely on these certifications, the site licenses, whatever, fine, but the manufacturer refused to share copies of their audit reports.
Wow.
They're refusing to share or even show an org chart. They won't let us come down to the facility for any reason, so they've already stonewalled us.
Right.
That is a huge red flag, but the cost is great, right? They beat everybody by 30 cents. We're going there, deal with it. Fast forward a few months later, FDA comes in, hits them with 9 or 10, maybe even more than that, 483s, very likely going to turn into warning letters, no identity testing, master manufacturing records don't match what the requirements say in 111. We have specification issues across the board. Environmental testing is a disaster. And so we see a lot of quality systems on the manufacturing side be built to achieve certification versus being built to achieve excellence at the consumer level, right? And so it's the latter system that you actually want, where if you're building a system that is just going to blow the socks off of your consumer and deliver a killer product every time, you're going to comply with 111. You're going to comply with NSF 455-2 largely. I mean, there are technical nuances there for sure, but if you build a system for the consumer, it's going to do what you need it to do. And that's really what you need to verify. If you're in that, growing from $1 to $10 million kind of growth phase is you need to know how proficient that quality system is for you.
That's good. Okay, so for someone that doesn't have any understanding of the industry terms, what the acronyms mean, can you explain to me like what is the specification for a dietary supplement? What does it include? What are the things that should be in a certificate of analysis that they should be putting in their product specifications when they're going to manufacturers?
Yep. Specifications are arguably the most important document a brand can have, and the specification just establishes the pass-fail criteria for that finished product. It includes the bill of materials, which is the bottle, the cap, the label, all of the inclusions into the product, all of your ingredients, the composition of everything. So it's really like the biblical text and anatomy of your product, right? And so aligning with your manufacturer there is really important, and it's not aligning on, yes, I want this bottle, this cap, whatever. That does happen, but it's more, what's the pass-fail criteria here?
So
what is
give me an example
range?
of pass-fail.
Yeah, so something like micro-testing, for example, understanding what the total plate count upper limit is supposed to be for your product and how dirty it can ultimately be from the micro perspective. But I think a better example would probably be in the supplement world, an active ingredient. Having vitamin C, for example. Your label claim may say 100 milligrams of vitamin C, whatnot. You need your specification to give you a range of acceptance there. Is it going to be 100 to 110? What test method is going to be used to test that vitamin C? If something goes wrong and we have an out of specification result that's either too low, too high, what are we going to do with that? Right. That's what you need to establish in that specification to make sure you're looking at the product through the same lens. You can't just say vitamin C, 100 milligrams, and everyone's going to know what to do with that, right? You submit it to 100 different labs, you may have 100 different test methods with 100 different results. So who's right?
Let me ask you this. So of the times where you see a brand really get in like a sideways position with the manufacturer, there's some tests fail, or there's some big financial obligation and they're trying to, maybe it's turning into litigation or just some kind of unpleasant argument, let's put it that way. How many times out of 10 do you see where the brand failed to set those specifications on the front end?
I would say the majority of the time, like maybe 75% of the time, it's an expectation alignment issue. And it could be something as simple as we did not establish the label tolerance, and the labels are all crooked and wonky, full of wrinkles and bubbles. If that's not explicitly called out in your specification, you don't have a whole lot of ammunition behind that argument where
crooked labels is subjective, but having a tolerance that's measured in millimeters is not. Right?
Exactly. So if you say, most labeling equipment has a tolerance of like plus or minus 1.5 to 3 millimeters up or down, side to side. You just need to establish that, right? So it's almost always a lack of expectation that triggers litigation, demand letters, settlements, everything like that, and it happens a lot. I deal with those situations every single week. This batch got rejected because X, Y, or Z thing is out of spec. And oftentimes the guidance we give to our clients, and especially new clients who've never worked with us, is I want you to talk to an attorney first. Here's a list of some attorneys you need to talk to, because we can help you investigate and tell you what went wrong, but you're already here, right? So you have a $100,000 batch on the line. You can pay us a couple $1,000 to do an investigation, sure, but that's not going to convince the manufacturer to just eat that cost, right? It's time to pull in the attorneys at the end of the day.
And that's where, I feel like with product specifications, sometimes these terms can get a little bit intimidating if you're talking to a brand founder that's more of a marketer than they are a technical quality person, right? And that's where it's just setting those, first your active ingredients, what's the acceptable limit on the lower and the upper end of that, and then you go through the other formulation, making sure that they're putting the right amount of inputs to match your whatever other label claims it is, nutrition facts, supplement facts, and then you get into the aesthetics of packaging, which are it's this idea that I've talked to some brand founders where they have this idea of none of the packages should be leaking, and it's you have to establish a spec on something. There's allowable quality limits for a reason, right? And you can search that AQL on an NSF and a website, and you can find what are the allowable quality limits, and that will give you a good benchmark to use to put on your product spec sheets. And
For sure.
if you can clarify, you can't clarify everything that could go wrong, but you can clarify the main things that are going to create 90% of the issues. And it shouldn't take more than really 30 minutes to do that kind of thing. And your manufacturer is going to love you for that. They should be setting that anyway, but there's a lot of manufacturers that maybe don't, and they're waiting for their brand to give that to them. And if you do that, you're showing your manufacturer that you're going to hold them accountable to something. You're going to avoid a lot of issues and headaches if you can start with that.
For sure, and I think that's another great reason to visit the manufacturer and look at their documentation, right?
Yeah.
If I don't come to you with this decked out ANSI Z1.4 fancy inspection table, all of that pass-fail criteria, I at least want to see your SOP and watch your inspection team, see what they're pulling off the line, see what they're rejecting, just kind of see through their eyes how my product is going to be treated. And I think it is easy to set that AQL criteria where, of course, you want 0 defects all the time, and it's all going to be perfect, but equipment tolerance is a very real factor.
Yes.
And that's not just labeling, right? That's fill volume, that's fill weight, that's cap torque, and everything, right? So everything has a range. There is very few black and white. It's either on or off. It passes or it fails, just type criteria. So, and you can largely standardize that across products, right? If you're selling stick packs, you could have a million different stick pack SKUs, the same defect acceptance criteria.
Yes.
Same thing on the tincture side. If you have a bunch of tinctures, different sizes, all of that criteria is largely going to be the same.
Yes, it is.
So,
and it's much better to it's better to learn being proactive than reactive about it. It's always more expensive that direction. Okay, so then when it comes to like quality, third-party certifications, which ones do brands need to know about, and in your opinion, which ones should they be looking for when they're vetting out manufacturers?
Yeah, that's a good question. On the manufacturing side, you always want a third-party GMP certification from an accredited certification body, not just some Joe Schmo guy who's been in quality for 30 years and he walked in, gave his thumbs up, stamp of approval when a Microsoft Word made a certificate. You don't want that. If you're in supplements, you want your manufacturer to have the ANSI NSF 455-2 certification or an equivalent. Could come from UL, could come from somewhere else, doesn't really matter. On the food side, you want some type of GFSI benchmarked scheme certified. So that could be SQF, BRC, FSSC 22, something like that. And on the beauty side, you need ISO 22716 or NSF 455-3. That is what you want. You want to have that third-party accredited certification for the facility. And if they don't have that, it's like I said earlier with those tiered suppliers. I know if I'm in a C tier supplier, I have to have additional process and preventive controls on my end. Right? So if they don't have GMP certification, but you've audited them and they're relatively compliant, but have a few gaps, you have to overcome the risks that those gaps introduce to you through testing, increased audits. Maybe you go out and audit twice a year instead of once every 3 years or something like that. So there are a lot of levers you can kind of pull, but I think on the product certification side, understanding if there are prerequisite manufacturer certifications that have to be in place first. NSF is a perfect example of that. We have brands that come to us and say, we want our products to be NSF certified, or informed choice, that, something technical and difficult. But then they have a podunk manufacturer who doesn't do identity testing and they're not GMP certified. You can't have a manufacturer that has a maturity level down here and a product that has a maturity level up here, right? So there has to be kind of that balance there. And if you want to upgrade your product certifications, you have to upgrade your supply chain largely. So if you're at one of those cost leader, very small or even very large manufacturers who only care about cost, you're going to have certification difficulties 9 times out of 10. You're going to be missing documentation, or a million different things could go wrong.
That's good. So looking for those main certifications are the crucial thing that a brand can do. And that's where I feel like there's so many different acronyms. And as a supplement manufacturer, we have I think it's 9 or 10 different certifications and regulatory authorities that look at us. But we've had GMP certifications that weren't that proficient when we first got going, and we were SQF, and there's just what so many people don't realize is just because it says a GMP certification does not mean it's the same as an NSF standard or a UL standard.
Right.
There's a lot of variance, and even within facilities that do have those third-party certifications, not all their processes may be as refined as the ones that got them that certificate in the first place, and
Exactly.
that's where like going to visit them is such a crucial thing.
Yeah, and I think something else that we often see happen with certifications is you'll bring in kind of your SEAL Team 6 of quality people, build all of these systems, make it nice and pretty, have a very well-represented quality team during the certification audit, and then that team is gone. Once that sheet of paper is mailed to you or sent to your email, they're gone. And then you're left with maybe a quality supervisor from the floor who got promoted into management, and now they have a robust, largely too sophisticated system. They can't maintain it, but they can limp through those audits and maintain the certification. So exactly what you said, the systems that got them there may no longer be there, and the people may no longer be there as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting, like the world of quality. It's like one of those careers that if you're at the right manufacturer that doesn't have support, like you can really grow up the channel or the ladder quickly, and maybe even in ways where you're just not prepared for it, because it's a lot of times like these auditors, they're not all auditing to the same checklist. They're not always looking at it with the same lens. So if you have it, you might continue to be grandfathered in some ways if you have an auditor that's a little bit lax or lazy on some certain things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the trouble is with some of those environments, you have, the floor level quality team who, it's a similar story to my trajectory, right? I started on the floor, worked my way all the way up, and I was given a lot of opportunities to succeed in terms of learning from very mature, very friendly, teacher kind of oriented people, but also learned a lot of very bad habits early in my career, more how to kind of psychologically navigate audits versus building a process where I did not have to worry about psychological warfare kind of stuff to get through those inspections. But if you're a manufacturer and you can't afford a good quality person, or what you think is a good quality person, $120,000, $150,000 a year person, at least give the team you do have training opportunities. Don't just say, you're technical, you're picky, go look up dietary supplement GMPs and figure it out. You don't want that training to happen inside an audit room coming from your certification auditor who feels bad for you. You want to give them those tools.
That's so good. Yeah, and that's where, fortunately for us, we never had to be in that position. But that's been because we've been proactive with hiring guys like you, getting other consultants to come in, look at what we're doing. We're in a very rural part of America, so we're not like Salt Lake City where there's such an industry knowledge base in that area. Like for us, it's our food inspector does not really understand supplements, and we have to do more educating on that end of it than we've been able to get. So that's where we really had to go out and tap other resources, get mentors, get consultants to come in, sharpen what we're doing, and it becomes a lot of fun because you can really see a lot of process improvement if you're proactive about it and chasing just excellence than you are regulatory compliance, which is good.
For sure.
Okay, so then last couple questions here. How manufacturers can improve. So where do you see contract manufacturers? We'll go in really just supplements, cosmetics, food. Where do you think that we can be upping our game in the next 5 years?
It's a good question. I think being more proactive in really all three of those categories to educate the brands that you work with about what it is they're actually asking you for. Because a lot of requests from the brand are trickle-down requests from their sales channel partners. And so we all need to understand what the actual question is being asked. What do you actually want from this, right? And I think you can address that by having a good quality system. But, I mean, in general, just not assuming that the brand is as technically proficient as you are as a manufacturer is huge, right? We cannot assume that these expert marketing people are just going to understand all of the technical nuance on the manufacturing floor. So bring them out to the facility, show them the process. Don't hide behind, oh, this is my proprietary production line. It's no, you bought a simplex filler from Alibaba. You're not doing anything proprietary. Foot pedal operated. It's not proprietary. So just give your brand partners the opportunities to succeed by helping them understand your process. And on the brand side, we see a lot of frustration where I sent them an email 3 days ago. How come this thing hasn't been relabeled? And blah, blah, blah. It's 100,000 units. And I'm just thinking, okay, you took 30 seconds to type out and send this email. That email has affected and changed the production schedule for 300 people. You have to rush order labels. There are so many things that have to go right in order for that email request to be executed well. So just show them the reality of what it is you do. And that does help them understand that, oh, maybe my request is not quite as reasonable as I thought it would, or I should be more patient in this situation. Or the opposite is true where, okay, I observed this took 3 days. Why did the last time take 10? You know what I mean? Like that goes both ways, certainly. And I think just being open with each other is the best advice I can give both the brand and the manufacturer. At the end of the day, you're on the same team. And if one of you fails, exactly. Exactly.
If you fail, the other fails too. That's good. Yeah, and I think it's like, for us, it's the best relationships we've had has always been where we've been able to earn trust right away. We've been able to invest in that relationship, and likewise for our brand, coming to visit your manufacturer is such a big deal. Obviously in our discussion on audits, but just them knowing that you want to invest in that relationship is going to make the relationship go better, especially when you need them to execute a big order in a shorter time frame, where you need them, especially when you need them through a challenge. You're gonna, if you have that trust, it's gonna be a big. It's such a critical foundational piece to navigating those things.
Well, it's a great point, and I think kind of a final comment I guess I have about the brand manufacturer relationship is this. I hear all the time from smaller founder-led teams, and small founder-led team could still be a brand doing $100 million plus, right? I trust the manufacturer. We've been working with them for a long time. Nothing has gone wrong. We're friends. We go on vacations, blah, blah, blah. They're coming to my wedding. Fine. I get that. However, it is easy to have a good relationship when things are going well, but when it hits the fan and something really bad happens and there's a lot of money on the line, the communication channels are gone, basically. Instead of, the CEO to CEO, it's chief legal officer to chief legal officer kind of thing. And so insulating yourself from those risks by having good quality systems on both sides, setting the expectations, it's such a godsend when you are in those situations where kind of that plan of attack and the resolution pathway, I suppose, is already mapped out. That saves a lot of pain, suffering, and kind of relationship trauma between the brand and the manufacturer. And I've seen it all the time where, we could have a brand spend 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars a year with a pretty large manufacturer, and we have what should have been kind of a small quality issue just escalate, and suddenly it's C-suite versus C-suite, brands flying down to the manufacturer, they're angry at each other, and we've suddenly spent $100,000 in a pissing match where we could have addressed this in a specification. Right?
So good. Yeah, it's funny how that works out. Just the unspoken expectations lead to front-loaded resentment in any relationship. And I always think of, there's a mentor of mine that gives me a lot of advice when it comes to interviewing people. Whenever you're interviewing someone, the question should always be, what are the red flags? And if you can't answer what are the red flags, it means you don't understand the person well enough, because everyone has red flags. And when you look at manufacturing relationships, there's always, most often, if you ask the question, you could have probably predicted where things could have gone wrong. And there's always an intuition feeling you have, but if you don't have a process, you're always going to miss that. You're going to miss at least one of those things. So parting advice here. What's one piece of advice you leave founders and supply chain leaders with right now?
Build the systems you need before you think you need them.
That's good.
The last place you want to learn your quality system sucks is when you have a product rejection that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, or I've seen multi-million dollar quality issues, and that is not the lesson that you should learn to build a quality system. It's not the, oh shoot, I should have done this. It's no, building the quality system now is infinitely less expensive than waiting for that quality event to happen, because not only did that happen and you have a cost associated with that, you still have to build a quality system, and there's a cost associated there. So why not front load the financial cash flow pain of doing that, and then using that quality system to try to unlock value to really pay itself off. That's why I call quality a value center, is we can often find those stones and turn them over and say, oh, here, we can save $10,000, $20,000 a year on testing if we consolidate our network and go here. And if you have a quality person with that mindset, quality is never going to be free, but it will be as close to free as it possibly can be.
It pays for itself quickly if you do it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so Nate, where can people find more about, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you and what you guys are doing at Qualitas?
Yeah, our website is myqualitymanager.com. We have a lot of resources there. You can learn about quality, but you will most often find me on LinkedIn posting 3 to 5 times or more per day about all of the issues that we run into on a day-to-day basis, real life practical applications of quality, and just some horror stories, the occasional meme, but we like to just share the reality of our experiences, what we do, the people we talk to, and just do what we can to make the industry a better place.
That's great. Yeah, it's definitely worth a follow, especially if you're like curious about quality, or you're a brand, you're working in supply chain, definitely worth a follow. And especially if you're a manufacturer and working in quality, I learned so much just by following your content. And it's just gleaning from your experience, not just at my facility, but at other facilities, is insanely helpful. So that's definitely worth a follow. Nate Call, Call, just like it sounds. Man, thanks so much for coming on the pod. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
All right.